Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today, please ignore the fact that my top is really wrinkled. I didn't realise and I'm not changing it, so hello. Today's video is going to be a BMAT rundown, so it's going to be pretty much a version 2 of the UK Cat video that I did last summer, I think. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my experience of the BMAT, my results, resources that I used, general advice and also tips for each section. If you're taking the BMAT, you're probably taking the UK Cat as well, so I will link my UK Cat video somewhere in the information card. Without further ado, let me just relive my worst nightmare. I'm quickly going to do an overview of the BMAT. So it's split up into 3 different sections. You've got section 1, which is the kind of aptitude and skills section. It's basically UK Cat 2.0. I'm still having a debate with myself about which one was worse, but yeah, it's like problem solving skills, critical thinking, analysis, data interpretation, all that really fun stuff. It is 35 questions, 35 marks, 60 minutes. Section 1 and section 2 are marked kind of like UMS conversions, so they convert your actual raw mark to a decimal score between, I think it's 0 and 9, and that is the score that comes up when you get your result. Section 2 of the BMAT is scientific knowledge and applications, so it's basically GCSE level biology, chemistry, physics and maths, and this is 27 questions, so 27 marks, and it's 30 minutes. Section 3 is the writing task, so this is basically like an essay. You get 30 minutes and you get a choice of one of 3 different questions, and this is marked differently to section 1 and section 2, so basically they give you a mark from 1 to 5 based on the quality of your content, and a grade kind of from A to E based on the quality of your written English. I'm going to move on to my results. Now, I know that I said that I wasn't particularly pleased, and I wasn't, like, not lying, but before, like, I get angry comments, everyone sets their own standards for themselves. But section 1 I got 5.4, section 2 I got 5.9, and section 3 I got a 3A. To be fair, that was the hardest exam that I'd ever seen of the BMAT papers. Moving on to the resources that I used, I mostly used books, so I have them with me. The first thing that I did, literally the first thing, was use this book, and this is by Cambridge Assessment, which are the people who write the BMAT, and it's preparing for the BMAT, and it's really like quite short. It doesn't have too many questions, but it kind of has an introduction to it with like general tips and information, and then it has questions and it has answers with detailed feedback to explain to you why that answer is the answer. So I think that this is a really good starting point. Next thing I have is the ISC Medical 700 BMAT questions. It just has questions and answers, and again it has explanations, which are really handy. Not gonna lie, I didn't do the whole of this book. I did the whole of the science question section, and I did pretty much half of the section 1 questions. I didn't really do any essay stuff, which I probably should have, but like, unlike the UK Cat, BMAT actually has past papers, so that's going to give you the best feel of what it's going to be like in the exam. So along with the past papers, which you can find online by the way, literally just type in BMAT past papers, I got this book, which this was probably the best book you could ever get, ever, for the BMAT. It's BMAT Past Paper Worked Solutions, and they've got an updated version of this, I think. This book explains them all. Like, it's more about how you're going to get to the question, not the question, it's more about how you're going to get to the answer than whether you can get the answer right. And the best thing about this book is the section 3 bit. It has all the past questions and points for the past question. It's so much easier than making your own essay plans for every single past paper section 3 question. Now I'm going to move on to general advice for the BMAT. So I've already said do past papers. That's literally the best way to practice for the BMAT. All the past papers are available online, so just do as many as you can. I pretty much did every single one. With like the time frame for revision for the BMAT, I definitely left it way too late. Obviously you have to balance that with schoolwork, so maybe like a month and a half in advance, start doing some practice. Don't leave it too late because you will regret your life decisions. In the exam itself, this is quite similar to the UK CAT. It's really time pressured. You don't have time to spend 8 billion years on one question. If you've looked at a question and you've attempted it and you literally can't do it, just guess it and move on, like circle it, come back to it at the end if you have time. There is no point of sitting there and trying to figure it out because you're probably not going to be able to in the first place, and then you're going to drop so many marks on like future questions that you could have got right. Obviously it's not like circling answers, it's filling in the answer sheet at the end. Just make sure you leave like a minute, just flip back through your question booklet and just fill in the random answers that you chose onto your sheet, so that way you actually have answers on your answer sheet. And do try to answer every question. Literally, you have a 20% chance of getting it right, so don't leave any questions blank because there's no point, there's no negative marking, so it doesn't really matter. As with anything, try to prioritise the sections that you find hardest, but don't completely like focus in on one particular thing and then neglect everything else, because everything needs practice for the BMAT. You can't just waltz in to the room and sit it and get a really good score. Finally, for like my little advice thing, don't go from section to section thinking, oh my god, I screwed up that last section so badly, I failed, there's no point. Don't really like stress yourself out and work yourself up, because it's not going to help you in any way, and chances are you probably haven't failed as badly as you thought. Also, I have a little addition to my past paper ramble before. Do them in timed conditions and try to simulate an exam at least once if you can, like section 1, section 2 and then section 3 done consecutively. The first few, just do the papers and give yourself as much time as you want just to get used to the questions, but after a few of them, just start doing them all timed. Make sure you're being realistic about where you're at so that you don't get to the exam and you think it's all going really well and then it all just crumbles. Now, tips for each section. Woohoo! Section 1, the best thing that you can literally do is practice, and I know I've literally said to practice about 50 times in this video, but like section 1 is like the UK CAT. You need to get used to the kinds of questions that they're going to ask you. You want to do as many papers and as many different questions as possible so that you've got the widest kind of range of knowledge of questions, and especially for the questions that are like pick the strongest argument or like which statement best summarizes this passage, it's really useful to do as many of those as possible because generally they have like a similar pattern. With those critical thinking, like select which argument, blah 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 blah, don't make any assumptions. Like, that is the number one tip that I would give for those kinds of questions. It will all be in the text. Don't assume anything. Literally pick the response that completely fits with what was written in the passage. Practice maths for section 1 because it's so like, there's so much of it and you don't get a calculator, so you have to do mental maths. So practice doing things in your head. Obviously don't use a calculator if you're doing practice questions because that's cheating, and practice doing fractions. Yeah, there's just a lot of awkward numbers. If you don't know the answer on section 1, as I said, skip and just pick a random one, but kind of look at the data and look at the answers that you're given, because it's multiple choice obviously, so like it's a bit easier. Literally just pick the one that looks like it would fit the best. Kind of try and make an educated guess about it. Once you finish section 1, and if you have any time left over, go back obviously to the questions that you couldn't do or that you weren't sure on. Really try and think about a different way in which you could answer the question, because that might lead you to like a little mini breakthrough and you'll be able to actually get the right answer. In some cases you will have already had the right answer by guessing, but you know, don't take your chances. Just check over your answers to make sure that you didn't make any stupid mistakes, because often they would put 2 answers that you can like obtain both of them, but for one of them you make a stupid mistake to get to that answer. So then a lot of people will be like, oh, I got this answer, it's here, let me just circle that one. But like, no, you did it wrong. So yeah, just try and check through your working if you have time. You probably won't, but like, give it a shot. Section 2 is science. And you actually need to revise for this. Like, this is the one that you need to kind of revise for as if it were an exam. It's not just solely based on practice, because it's basically, they say it's GCSE level biology, chemistry, physics, maths. The trap here is that it's taken from GCSE specs from like multiple different exam boards, and each one has a different spec, and some specs include more than others. So I did AQA and it included a lot less on certain topics than, for example, EdXL. So the issue there was that we hadn't obviously covered some of the stuff that was going to be in the BMAT. However, they've now come out with a BMAT specification, which is like, I think it's a CGP book. And you can just read through that. That's literally everything you could be asked in the BMAT. I didn't do a lot of revision for biology and chemistry. I read over a few of my past mind maps, but not every single bit of the spec. However, for physics, I just read over everything that I had done at GCSE physics, because I literally couldn't remember half of it. So section 2 is probably the most tight for time. If you don't know what I don't know, antibody does, then you're not gonna know after 5 minutes of looking at the question. Just move on. Process of elimination is really, really good for section 2. If you know that certain choices are just too ridiculous to be the answer, just obviously cross them through. Section 3 is the writing task, aka my least favourite section of the BMAT. To be fair, it is the most chilled. Like, it's not too time pressured at all. You get a choice of 3 questions, and it's generally something like a quote. One will be a quote, say what it is, argue for or against depending on what the statement is arguing, and then evaluate. And the other type of question, I think, is something to do with like current events, I think, if I can remember correctly. And the other one is most likely an ethical scenario. Obviously, it's not the same every year, but I think those are the general ideas. The essay is written on one sheet of A4. It's not even A4 because it has like a border, and then it has like quite a large chunk at the top with like boxes to write your name and stuff. That's the only sheet that you get. So basically, if you screw up, you screw up, and that's it. Therefore, I think it is best to plan your answer. Firstly, you need to obviously decide which statement or question you're going to answer. So just look through them, and literally don't pick the one that sounds the coolest or the best. That mirror is glaring. Don't pick the one that will make you sound really intelligent or like is the hardest, so it'll impress people. Like, they don't really care, they just want your essay to be good. So pick the one that you can write most about and you can write most easily about, and then make a plan for that question. The plan should probably take about 10 to 15 minutes, and then you can leave 10 to 15 minutes for writing the actual answer, because it's not that much to write. So realistically, writing a page of A4 probably takes you about 15 minutes in real life. So you can write the essay really easily, but you need a detailed plan. Like, when I say plan, I mean literally pretty much write out everything that you're going to write it out in the order that you're going to write it, and in your head try to construct some sentences that you could use based on the stuff that you wrote down, and think about how you're going to structure it. So that way, when you put pen to paper, you literally pretty much know what your essay is going to be. Cut back on the filler sentence waffle a bit. Like, it needs to be concise, basically, is what I'm saying. There's like a balance to be found. On the one hand, you don't want to do loads of waffle and explanation and very few points. But on the other hand, you don't want to just do points without actually expanding on them. I did a paragraph for the first bullet point, which was like explain or discuss, a paragraph for the second one, which was the argument, and then a paragraph for the third one, which was the evaluation. And that way you just get all of them in, and if they can identify that you've done all of those 3 things, then that's a guaranteed pretty much 3, as long as you didn't write absolute rubbish. You can add a conclusion if you want to. Not gonna lie, I completely forgot in the actual thing, like it just wasn't in my brain to like write a conclusion. Now that my throat is in absolute agony, I'm going to finish this video. So that was pretty much all the tips that I have. If you have any questions, do comment them in the comment section. I will reply to all your comments because I have nothing better to do really. I should be revising, but like I'm sat here filming, so you can see how motivated I am. Not very. If you like this video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, I don't know, subscribe to my channel, the button is below this video. Thank you for watching again, and I will see you in my next video, which will hopefully be very, very soon. Bye!